Welcome to Prose Cons, a podcast by writers for writers, brought to you by Precipice Fiction. Precipice Fiction would like to acknowledge the people of the Eora and Durag nations as the original custodians and storytellers of the land this podcast was created on.
Hello, or maybe I should do a cold chewing open and just be...
Oh, God.
I don't mind
All
that.
right. Okay.
ASMR, right? Just.
All right, folks at home. I don't know if you can hear that sound, but I'm chewing. Welcome to Pros and Cons, where we'll be talking about food in literature. And I'm here with Matan.
Hey, good morning.
Ellie.
Hello and good afternoon.
And I am Phoenix, and I'm still chewing right now. So just some ground rules of this episode. I have asked everyone to bring a snack with them. So bear with us because this episode might have some chewing sounds, not overwhelmingly. They're small snacks, they're reasonable, but they'll be happening. Just lean in, just let the sounds take you. Maybe you'll get some ASMR, who knows?
We apologize if that's not your thing.
Yeah. But before we get into that, what are people watching, reading, feeling, enjoying? Ellie.
Yes, I feel like I've finally got a good answer to this because rather than just saying Moby Dick again, which I am still reading, that's at the bottom of the pile at the moment. But I dove into like two new books I've been reading since last podcast. One was kind of work related in that I had a book event coming up, so I had to speed read, get through this book because I was talking to the author. That's a local author, Alex Sarkis, has written a rom-com set in Western Sydney called Something Blue. So I devoured this book in like 3 days. And I really enjoyed it. Like she had a lot of fun playing like with Western Sydney Lebanese stereotypes, but like you could tell she was leaning into them so lovingly and would like present the stereotype, but then would flesh out these characters. So you adored every character she put on the page, and her dialogue was hysterical. So I really recommend that. It's not usually my usual grab bags. I do read a lot of spec fiction or historical fiction, and this is just a contemporary rom-com, so not my usual thing, but I adored it. The other thing I'm reading at the moment is Jade City by Fonda Lee. So this is my usual grab bag. It's a martial arts fantasy, so that's right in my wheelhouse. I love it to death.
Nice.
It was a bit of a slow start. I'm like listening to the start as an audiobook, and I'm like, oh, I want to love this more than I am. But I just stuck with it. And then I knew once I was in, I would be in. Like, I don't know if you guys have that experience with books where you're just like, I just got to give it a little bit more and I'll fall over the precipice, as it were. And I've finally done that. So I finally fell over the precipice. I'm in it. I'm loving it. And recommend it.
And I feel like for me, it's like when I finally fall in, I suddenly feel like really warm and held. I'm like, ooh, I'm in. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just go.
Is this the first time we do a precipice pun in this podcast? Because if so, shame on us.
I'm pretty sure Alex has done plenty.
Okay. All right.
We'll have to do a Moby Dick counter and a precipice counter, I reckon, for puns.
Oh my gosh, yes. And Matana, what have you got going on?
Yeah. I'm still going through another reread of Lord of the Rings. I wrapped up The Hobbit, and I'm with the Fellowship of the Ring at the moment, which I'm super enjoying because, it's kind of funny because when I think about the movies, The Fellowship is usually third for me in my ranking. But as a book, it is so solid. It is such a solid book. But wait, maybe when I get to Two Towers, I'll realize I do like it more. Anyway, I've also done a complete marathon of The Boys season 1, 2.
Hey,
1 and 2.
I feel like 1, 2, 3. I watched the whole lot, and I feel like some shows are not made to be consumed in such
that quickly.
intensity.
No.
And it's just like, it's like when you eat too much ice cream and you get this, brain freeze. I stopped caring. This show makes you think like, what's the point of it all?
Yeah, no,
We're
that's
just
a really good way to fuck yourself up, Matan. Well
Yeah.
done.
I mean, I look in the mirror and I think to myself, man, Homeland is just gonna kill us all at some point. Then I have to remind myself that he's not real. No, it's not a spoiler, okay? He's a dick by episode 2. All right, I'm not spoiling anything. But yeah, great show. It's one of these shows that kind of floats around you, even if you haven't watched it, and then finally, after enough memes, you're like, fine, I'll watch it. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah, welcome to the pain. It's very good.
Yeah. I've only seen season 1, but it was one of those shows where I was like walking past my housemate watching it and I just got sucked in. Like I was walking and I just like sat down. Before I knew it, I watched like the whole season. It was very engaging and like engrossing. I had a similar experience to you, Ali, actually, because I was editing for someone and it was a 70,000 word novel. And I also shotgunned it in 3 days. Just like I had clients booked. And so I ran through this one. And normally I don't really like talk about pieces I'm editing as like whatever, but this one was like one of the most polished pieces I've received. And it was really clean. I hardly had anything to do. But I was actually like really engaged in it, and there were actually times where I like had like very emotional like reactions while we were driving. Yeah, this is also not in my usual grab bag. It was a romantic comedy slash like erotica. There was mature content in it. But she did an excellent job. We talked about this before in our podcast about like the difference between literature and pornography. She was explicit, but it felt in character. It felt right. It felt true to the story. Yeah. It was great. And then another thing I just recently saw Nope in theaters.
I want to watch that.
I don't normally go for horror. It was good.
Is it horror though? Is it?
It's definitely like soft horror. It's more thriller leaning. And then there are some like thriller leaning, but definitely has like, you could tell in the sound editing and the way that like certain moments go quiet and like the way they kind of manipulate the sound as well as set up certain shots. It's horror. Like it has that element to it. And yeah, it's mostly thriller, but it got me. It was good. It was engaging. I definitely liked the first half more than the second half. But there was straight up one scene in there where I was just like, I almost kind of want to leave the theater a little bit. But don't take that. Okay. If you're a horror watcher, don't take that as a reason to like, my constitution for horror movies is so low. So don't take
I just love watching horror I love watching horror in the cinema. It's such a different experience. And
this is the first time I've done it actually.
In a full cinema, hopefully with a bunch of scared teenagers, it is just like you bask in the screams and the curses of, oh fuck, don't go there.
I think I saw one of the early Paranormal Activities. Like, remember when there was like a lot of hype around those early ones? I think I went and saw one of those in the cinema. So you just, where you're just watching the found footage for like an hour before you get the one jump scare. That paid off really well in a cinema setting. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Paranormal Activity. That's when I swore off horror movies. I actually watched it. And then that night was so traumatized that literally like I woke up because I swore I heard my house, like the furnace made a sound, and it was like the exact same sound that the footsteps were like made in the movie. But like the smallest fraction of a second, I actually was convinced it was happening. I was like, this is it. And after amidst my fear, I just had a very sober moment where I was like, I don't have to watch these movies. No one's making me. I don't have to do this to myself. And I was like, I won't anymore. And then I just kind of stopped. I watched very few.
Yeah. Master of your own fate. I can appreciate that.
Yes. But anyway, we might dip back into horror as we go. Who knows? But we are talking about food in literature today. So this has a large breadth. This can go a lot of different directions. And to start, I thought it'd be fun as a little like live literature challenge. Everyone here is going to take a bite of their food.
Oh god.
And then
Are you gonna make us
or you
talk
don't
with
even
our mouth full?
no. You actually don't have to take a bite if you don't want to, but like really tap into your author or your inner Miyazaki and just like really describe to the listeners, particularly those that are not watching the video, what you love about your food. Really sell your food to them. Paint them a picture, have them feel your food.
Oh god, do we have a timer, or does this have to be top of the head?
Top of the head, and it doesn't have to
God.
be any set length. No. Yeah, no pre-timer. You don't have time to think about it. This is live. This is live poetry.
Didn't know this podcast came with an exam.
Free verse.
All right.
Wait.
Are you going first?
Let's
then?
do this.
I could go first. Okay, I could go first. Oh gosh, yeah, it's not okay. Let's see. All right, what I'm eating right now is it's a brittle cookie, crisp to the touch, chocolatey mocha in color with the slightest speckle of nut-esque pieces throughout. When you bite it, it snaps. When you crunch it, it claps. I'm trying really hard, reaching for that poetry between your teeth, and it leaves your mouth with a really nice aftertaste. It goes excellent with coffee, crisp, liquid, crunchy, sweet, soothing. It goes down nice.
And you're hired for their new advertising role. Well done.
Oh, thank you. This was Isola, authentic Italian Frolini.
It's a goddamn biscuit, is what it is. All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
There's two different types of prose. There's the literary, and then there's the invisible prose. And,
abridged version, it's a goddamn biscuit.
All right.
Well, okay.
Shall I have a crack then? You want to go?
Please.
Okay.
You go. Why not?
I'm going to describe the whole experience from opening it.
Nice.
So the crinkle of the paper, I'm transported straight back to childhood friends' birthday parties where these fun-sized chocolate wrappers would be handed out. So there's always something quite satisfying about actually breaking into it. Oh, that was smooth.
That was smooth.
The actual texture. So it is a twirl. It is Cadbury. So classic Cadbury chocolate. I can already smell it just holding it. It is that very kind of light, airy milk dairy chocolate. It's not a heavy chocolate, and in fact the twirls are designed that they almost have air pockets all the way through, so it's not too heavy at all. I don't like breaking twirls because it's gonna crumble everywhere because it is such a soft chocolate. I don't even need to bite it to really describe what it's going to taste like because I smashed a couple of these before, but they are the very light. Yeah, no, the dairy milk chocolate, and the other immediate sensation I associate with it is if I do eat too many of these, I do feel sick. So even though they taste light on the tongue, they sit heavy in the stomach and will probably trigger a migraine for me later. But they taste good enough to do that to myself anyway, and that's my endorsement.
All right, that was impressive. Okay, so let me introduce my old friend Bounty. Now, I'll be honest with you. There's a reason this is the last guy remaining in the fridge, all right? And it's not because I love him. There have been much better snacks with this guy, and they were all finished promptly. And now we're left with you, this chocolatey, chubby piece of disappointment, really. Because you look at this and you think to yourself, oh, I'm going to enjoy a nice bite of chocolate. But then you open it and you realize this is as much coconut as can be humanely shoved down a throat without choking you. Now, am I going to take a bite? Yes, because that's what we're here for. Am I going to enjoy it? All right, let's see. Now, I'm going to be chewing this for an hour because humans are not meant to chew so much coconut. I hope you're happy, Phoenix.
Oh, I'm very happy.
Oh my God. Well done with that.
Oh, that's a short story right there. Like, you built a character. Oh my gosh, that was
You
great.
asked for a snack on a short notice. That's what I have.
Yeah. You opened the fridge door and you sighed. Chocolate chubby was my favorite. That was great.
He's
This
been there
chocolate
for
chubby
weeks.
snack.
Okay.
Uh,
Oh, the unloved
so
fountain.
so yes, food can play quite a range of roles in literature, and that was kind of just demonstrated there, from grotesque or almost like well, you didn't describe it grotesquely, but disdain, dislike, or something. It can reflect that in a character, as well as like comfort, abundance, bounty, sanctuary. It can also be used on the flip side to, in a horror movie, sometimes taking something that's usually delicious, beautiful, and giving a twisted context around it can suddenly turn it sour and gross and create a sensation of destabilization, because the foundation you normally have is suddenly no longer something you can trust. And we're going to get into this today. We're going to talk about it a little bit more. We're going to, explore this a little bit. I do have a few prompts, a few things to think about, and then we'll just see where we go from there. But the first kind of area, let's see, actually, I guess, we'll jump in with this. How do you two feel you use food in your writing, and if you do so consciously, and if so, what do you find you're usually trying to accomplish when you introduce food into a scene?
Excellent question. I'll have a crack, because I was able to think about it to myself in two ways why I would include food in a story. And the first one for me, when I'm working primarily in fantasy, is it's a world building tool. Because food can tell us so much about the setting. It represents culture, history, even like the economic state that the characters are in. What ingredients are they using? What natural resources do they have around them? Do they have what is the level of protein they have access to? And not even diving into kind of history and culture. How food is prepared, recipes. So like, I feel like we could spend forever even just unpacking that. But I guess that's my kind of go-to. It's an awesome world building tool for all that. And then my other answer would be food as a sensory tool. So I guess we're always talking about, we want the reader to be able to not only picture things, we want them to be able to hear things, we want them to be able to smell and taste things. And I guess if you don't want your characters running around licking walls, the go-to tool is you're giving them food to taste and sharing that experience with the reader.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm definitely with Ali on this one. Food as a measuring stick, right? You can tell so much about a character from what they eat. I think, are we supposed to go into examples? Or
because just run with it.
I think George R.R. Martin does an excellent job of using food as like, look how rich these fictional lords are. They're eating swan in plum juice. How weird it is. In my writing personally, I usually emphasize food when it is lacking, especially in the setting I'm currently writing. I'm trying to show who doesn't have food, or what kind of food they do have. It's a great way to show a financial situation, or later on, it can be a small success when someone gets a good meal.
Even stakes of a story could easily revolve around food.
I actually thought you were literally talking about steaks there.
We'll pretend I intended that. But I'm thinking of Name of the Wind, because I remember very early on
That's
in
what
that
I thought
book.
of.
Yeah, no, food as stakes is very well used, and then a reward that's the character journey you go on. Success is then aligned with the sensory description you get from excellent food that is earned. It's very well done.
Same with the other one was, I actually listened to The Lies of Locke Lamora right before I then listened to Name of the Wind, and it was the same thing. Like the beginning of Lies of Locke Lamora, you're introduced to like scarcity, low down economic standing, and then this small thief having no shame, thieving to earn a meal, and like whatever this meal is. I remember the descriptions of the sausages and stuff, and it's good.
Yeah, no, Scott Lynch. I even went to the effort of going away and grabbing a quote from some of his stuff. Because I think he does it so well. Liza Lockmore is such a good example because that's tied into the culture. I feel like you learn so much about what he's describing as Komori by letting us watch them prepare food and how important it is to them that they're going to band together and prepare food. So I grabbed this because this was so fun and I thought it was worth sharing. Nice. At the end of the banquet table were desserts, in brackets, the fifth beautiful art, as in this culture labels its different types of art through preparing food. Cherry cream cakes encased in shells of gold leaf that were intended to be eaten, cinnamon tarts painstakingly assembled with honey paste glue in the shape of sailing vessels, a whole fleet of little ships with white marzipan sails and raisins for crewmen. There were hollowed out pears, their cores replaced with cylinders of river melon fruit or brandy creams. There were shaved river melons, their green exteriors scraped down to reveal the pink flesh inside. Every exposed pink face bore a relief sculpture of the crest of Comor. The alchemical globe set within the melons made them glow with an inviting pink light.
Ooh.
How fun is that?
It's so fun. That's so fun. I love it as the fifth art. It creates creates so much for me in that world.
And it's so effortlessly done, what you've just implied about how important this culture holds, like food and culinary standing, is because we're gonna elevate cooking and chefs to the fifth art of our culture.
Well, we do the same in our culture, don't we? We really elevate chefs. Look at the stuff we watch on television, Iron Chef, Master Chef. We really treat these guys like superstars, you know. So
the celebrity culture of chefs.
You kind of rarely see it in speculative fiction, right? Because to us, a lot of times the cooking goes to the innkeeper or to the not necessarily have a character. It's like, oh, this is the king's chef. He's a very important person.
That's true. I find when I've been very attracted to like how it's used in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, as well as in Harry Potter, where it's used to paint like to contrast maybe the start of in Harry Potter specifically, contrast the start of the story with like the introduction to the new world. You're met with abundance and like immense comfort, and like it really like anchors the reader in to know that they're in a safe place, a sanctuary. It's exciting, and it's like, what an introduction to the world of magic. Here's a banquet at the clap of my hands or whatever. Like, it's a great introduction, as well as like Lord of the Rings, just like painting, using it to help construct the comfort of a hobbit hole, and like the way that they talk. He talks about food and things like that. So I was always really attracted to that, as well as in how Miyazaki does it. He always put like, he goes out of his way to animate food like with extra care, just to give it more life, because he puts a lot of stock on food and how it's portrayed. And if you watch his movies, most of them do have a very like intimate cooking scene where it's really like a few minutes and sometimes there's no dialogue during it, where he really gives it to be cooked and just the focus is on the food. And it really, I've loved how much just anchors me into a story and like makes it come to life. It adds so much more life to it for me. So usually when I try to put food in my stories, it comes from that point of view. I'm usually trying to anchor someone in, both in terms of color, taste, and texture and stuff like that, as well as like I've used it to create a place of safety, help characters connect with one another, things like that. I've always been really attracted to that.
I think Miyazaki is such a great example, because I think he does it to reveal character as well. So like, if a character cares about food and is going to take that time and love and labor into food. I think Miyazaki's saying something very specific about that kind of protagonist and character trait, that they're a food person. And I think that's kind of bestowed with like delicacy on this character, has that care with food. So immediately, like kind of within Japanese culture, you know what the set values of that person are because of their relationship with how they prepare food.
You know, but I really want to touch on the two stories you brought up, because I think it's a great example of food as a literary tool for your writing. Because let's take, for example, The Hobbit and Harry Potter for a moment. Both of these books have a great banquet, but if you pay attention, you can see that where this great meal happens changes on the timeline. Whereas in The Hobbit, you have it what, page 5, 6, 7, 10, you got this amazing dinner, all these dwarves let themselves in, they kind of invade his larder, they take whatever they want. But you have it very early in the book. When Harry Potter, you have it later, right? Only when he gets to Hogwarts and gets the dinner. What I'm trying to say is that you got contrast in both situations. In The Hobbit, first you get to see the plenty, so it can contrast what Bilbo has given up and what he's missing. The fact that he's out of his comfort, he's out of his element. He had everything he could have wanted, and now he's stuck in Mirkwood, haunted by spiders eating mushrooms off the ground. To show you his difficulty with Harry, they're trying to use food as a literary tool to show you the opposite, right? He was in Mirkwood Forest eating mushrooms in his in his room under the stairs, figuratively, and then he rose up, and you kind of see the change of fortune for both characters. And I think that's where food can really be effective as a storytelling element.
Yeah.
We're all lovingly musing on that.
Yes, chewing on that for a moment. While thinking about the topic of food, I was like thinking of the different things that could be used to accomplish, and I've already given a bunch of them. You could create scarcity with it, you could create abundance with it, blah. One thing that I was trying to think about, and I was wanting to see if either of you could think of an example of this, is where food could be used to create a sense of implicit, like, distrust. Because where it's not explicitly told to the reader. Like, I feel like there are scenes like in Pan's Labyrinth where it's like, don't eat anything. And then, like, all right, it's an amazing feast, but like, yeah, don't eat anything. Or like in the Adventure Time, there's literally like they kind of do a satire of that scene where there's a banquet table and there's literally like these weird, eerie, angelic people flying around, and they're literally just saying, partake of the fruit. And they're just like ignoring them and just walking through. They know it's a trap. But I was trying to think of a scenario where it's like something about the food is not, it creates an air of mistrust. Something's off, but where it's not. Yeah,
and I was going to say that almost feels rooted in like biblical history a little bit, isn't it? It's I feel like we're very ingrained from the start that there is the forbidden fruit. We've been told not to eat this thing and bad things will happen, and then eating it anyway and bad things happen. So like that's like the world's oldest trope, whatever. Anyway, but very early on we have this trope ingrained into us, and then being able to play with that in our fiction, it's low hanging fruit, I guess. Like the audience is going to understand that very early on, that you've been offered something, but there's rules around it. What's going to be the consequences of breaking the rules? Like that, you've got great story structure just embedded in your audience, ready to go.
Yeah, it's very the guy in the drinking from the chocolate fountain, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, is this story. Like it is like this again and again and again.
Chocolate fountain.
It's 5 forbidden apples.
That is such an improvement.
Yeah.
A scene that jumps into my mind, I haven't thought about this scene at all. When I thought about this podcast, this is just jumping into my head, is Curse of the Black Pearl, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes.
What's
Yes.
it's Captain Barbarossa, right? So there are these
Barbosa.
skeletons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these poor bastards, they can't eat. So they have all these food on their ghost ship, and they capture what's her name? Kira.
Keira
Keira
Knightley.
Knightley.
I want to say.
Hello,
Her
Miss
character,
Knightley.
she gets abducted, and they're giving her the food, and she freaks out because usually you don't eat when you're abducted by a bunch of pirates. And I think they use that scene to show that he eats the apple, and then the moonlight shines over him, and you can see the pieces of the apple go down his ribs. I think I'm remembering that scene correctly.
And I remember there was like the perversion of he just wanted to sit there and watch her eat. Like there was something in it for him as well.
I want to see.
Yeah, he's like, I want to see you taste that. Like he can get something sensory out of that, and that's very cool.
So that,
and he drinks the bourbon, and you watch the bourbon go down his. Down his
it's
ribs.
The bourbon, right.
The apple he poetically keeps on him until the end.
It's the apple.
All right, he takes a bite before he dies, no? Something like that.
I'm not sure if he ever actually takes a bite. Jack Sparrow takes a bite of his apple, I think. Or no, he takes a bite of an apple, but I don't think he ever gets to. I think that's the poetic thing. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Pirates of the Caribbean yet, it's very old. But he dies at the end, and the apple rolls out of his hand. He like never got to taste it.
Oh, what a tease! He doesn't get a bite.
No, he doesn't get a bite.
Wow.
He's brought back to life just to die. Bum, bum, bum.
Beautiful.
But yeah, it's like reflecting on this was pretty cool, because also that exact scene came to my mind because it's literally like kind of the counter to the forbidden banquet, where it's literally like, here's a banquet, and she literally asks, is it poison? And he says, no, I have no need for killing you. Like, and then like, you must be hungry, like just eat. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. And it's very disarming. Like, I feel like even though she's hostage, it's like, oh, she's allowed to eat. She's allowed to fill herself. It's delicious food. They've taken the time to prepare this food. It's a very like human.
I just imagine
thing.
Skeleton
The chef
cooking. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Which is amazing. It tasted good because they haven't had a need to eat for quite some time. Maybe they could still taste, but I digress.
And the other example of the forbidden banquet was back to
yeah.
Miyazaki. I remember you wanted to bring up Spirited Away as well.
Oh,
it does
yes.
that very well as the inciting incident to the whole story. And it's just surrounded with so much dread. It's done so well.
Yeah, that scene. Oh, well, it had the same effect on me. We talked about Pinocchio as well before this. I briefly brought it up. It had the exact same effect as Pinocchio on that like crazy donkey island, whatever that was. Oh my gosh, I saw that movie for the first time when I was 17, and I like I watched it in a class, and I left that class different. Like that stuck with me.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of readers, listeners who have not watched Spirited Away, could you describe that scene? What happens?
Oh, Allie, do you want?
Oh no, it's all you.
Oh, okay. So it's she crosses the river into this mystical abandoned amusement park. Then her and her family's following a scent of some delicious food. And also, I think it's cool that they use scent because it's a very animal instinctual sense. So it like triggers a weird sort of sense. They're detecting the food by smell. It's kind of weird. So they find the stall, and it's laden with all these heavy plates of all this really delicious, tantalizing food. There's nobody manning the stable or the tent, but they feel comfortable enough to start eating without explicit permission. And the father and mother dive in, tuck in real deep. They start eating their hearts out. And Chihiro is a little bit too scared and timid, so she just goes off and wanders. Various events unfold. She ends up going back to the tent later, and sitting where her parents were sitting are these vaguely anthropomorphic pig people wearing her parents' clothes, which the viewer can intuit are in fact the parents who have been turned into pigs for eating the food of the spirits. And then she proceeds to continue to be spirited away.
Do they remain pigs?
Oh, well, so it's quite a spoiler, but
That's the
I
plot.
mean, we went pretty deep, haven't we? Okay.
Yeah. So you know, classic. So this plot point set up at the beginning of the story. They're turned into pigs, and that's resolved at the very end. She needs to stand her ground and pass a test where she can identify her parents amongst many other pigs, and if she can pick them out of the crowd, they'll be transformed back into humans and they can go home safe and sound. And if not, then she must remain in the spirit world forever, doing all sorts of hard manual labor for Yubaba, the head of the spirit spa. This has been Spirit Cast, our very specific spirited away podcast within a podcast. Thank you for listening.
I could I'll have, because I didn't mention it before, I could talk a little bit about how I've gone about putting food into my fantasy story and how, like, my relationship with it.
Please.
Because I have a very funny relationship with food in, well, more cooking in general, in that I hate cooking, for the record. Like, I can appreciate it as an art from a distance, but it's just never anything I've wanted to spend any of my skill stats in. I'm like, I'm gonna leave that bar empty.
You put them in combat.
Yeah, no, I've put them elsewhere. I got a pretty good speech stat. Can't cook. Don't have an interest in cooking. It is the dump stat. And yeah, no, my relationship with it is, you know, trying to eat a meal 3 times a day is just wasting my time. I wouldn't have a relationship with food if I didn't need it to function. And I am a big fan of, like, the all protein slurry that surely we're heading towards as a species. Can't wait until we get there.
Soylent Green.
Yeah, so that's kind of my controversial take on my relationship more with cooking. Like, I like eating a good meal and I like the social elements of sitting around eating a good meal, but like, that can be a once a week thing. Doing it multiple times a day is just not worth the investment. Anyway, so with that as a context to where I'm going with this, I'm sitting down to write a fantasy manuscript, and it is a very heavy fantasy trope that, like, big old food scenes get a lot of attention. Like, I read out like, we've talked about Hobbit, Harry Potter, Scott Lynch with Liza Lockamora, and good old George R. R. Martin is known for this. Like, I was Googling before we did this, and I found an article that was literally called 10 times George R. R. Martin described food more erotically than sex. And so that's just what he's known for.
That checks out.
So I'm kind of like, well, if I'm going to include food as a world building tool that I want to, I'm like, I'm genuinely going to have to, like, spend a paragraph on food descriptions. That's just expected of the genre. That's something I'm going to have to engage with. How am I even going to intellectually do this when my relationship with food and cooking is just like, what a waste of time. So my solution to this was very, like, I think it's very funny and academic. That's why I'm introducing this as an anecdote. So kind of the setting of my fantasy story is Australiana, in that a lot of the flora and fauna are Australia. So I'm like, cool, I can kind of think about that. The food would be like, the proteins are Australian animals, and kind of the fruits and things would be almost, you know, quotation marks, like the bush tucker. Like, that's the style of food I have access to if that's my flora and fauna in my world building. So what I did is I went away and created a list of all of Australia's kind of natural resources, natural proteins and natural occurring fruits. And then I found an online like random word generator. And so I shoved this list into the random generator.
Did you put koala on that list?
I did draw the line at koala, but for example, I do have kangaroo, quoll, barramundi, like things that sound somewhat edible. I've put on the protein list. I did draw the line at koala. And so every time I got to a scene, every time I got to a scene where the characters needed to sit down and eat something, I would get the random generator to tell me what they were eating, like, because I could give less of a shit. And then so I'd let it spit back 3 words at me, and I'm like, great, that's their meal. So for laughs, I just wanted to read you some keywords and then how I would go away and turn those keywords into a paragraph. So I mentioned kind of kangaroo, quoll, barramundi. Say then I threw in black apples, oranges, cherries are in the list, and then things like native thyme, nuts, and just generic.
So basically a character in your story will say, hey, how's that kangaroo taco going for you?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. So so those are my keywords, and then I ask it to spit it back at me randomly, and then I get the words back, and then I turn it into a paragraph that could read something like, tables around the perimeter of the hall were stacked with bay cherries, desert figs, and black apples. Meats had been finely sliced, ranging from lean kangaroo and lemon aspen barramundi, all served on beds of ginger spiced rice. Portions of quoll were topped with nuts, oranges, and finger limes. The centerpiece, a bonfire roasted whale shark the size of the man who'd wrangled it, was stuffed with lady apples, peppers, and dusted with wattle and native thyme. What? So just imagine that paragraph like, it's a choose your own adventure, just random generated inserted.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know that you hate food from this, Like I think, wow.
So I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Went through great land.
That's my pure writing skill, that I take something I am so disengaged with and found a very academic way to force some writing out of it and make it sound
whale
good.
Shark. That was
I don't
wow.
That was the one that I was like, oh, whale shark. That's
fried
the
whale
difference
shark
in our worlds. Yeah.
Wow. That is special, isn't it?
Yeah. Stuffed with lady apples. That's a lot of lady apples.
I'm appalled or interested, like it.
Now that you know the secret.
Ooh, the forbidden meat.
Yeah, maybe the whale shark should go. I've had a beta reader be like, sharks are quite rubbery. That wouldn't actually taste nice. So maybe I should take that into consideration.
In Japanese culture, do they eat sharks? Isn't it a thing?
Yeah, people have plenty of cultures have been
shark
eating
fin stew or something like that.
People have eaten sharks for centuries, but
I feel like a whale shark is more of a flex for the host than anything. It's not you're not supposed to eat it. You're supposed to.
Well, this is a banquet scene. Yeah, it is. It's a centerpiece. Yeah.
It's a centerpiece.
I would fry a shark.
That's
like Voldemort would have served it. So
would he? I don't know what Voldemort.
Okay, let's
serving is.
Let's do a quick one. What would Voldemort serve for the Death Eater banquet after killing Harry? Like, what's in it?
Yeah, because that is a what is on the tables? Wow.
Fried phoenix. Sorry, phoenix.
Honeyed apples. We have stuffed carrots and all sorts of delicious syrupy goods. I tried my best to recreate the Hogwarts banquet because that is where my heart, should I have one, is. It's just the same as the Hogwarts.
This is more emotional than I expected it to be. Like, you had me invested.
And that's how you can use
pushed
food
you away
as a literary device.
Thank you for staying. Yes.
We now know more about Voldemort as a character because the food is linked to memory, which exposes character backstory. Yeah. No, it's what a great tool.
What a great tool. Yeah. In the end, food is it's very humanizing. It can make characters, even like Voldemort, appear to have a soul. That's the power of food.
Okay, Voldemort cooking. Now that's the scene that we need.
Yeah, he went away and cooked before that scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just plating it all up. He's like, Lucius is
just
sitting
putting
here.
A pinch of salt in something. Yeah. That's what I'm.
Hold on, Lucius, right before you take that away. Bam. Look at that. You're all set. You're off and running. Yeah. My mind went vodka maraschino just for something on top. It's terrible.
Okay. That's great.
And with that, I'll try to I'll close. No, I'll open this here. I had to close Chrome to help my Zoom speed.
Now I want to see a fanfic of Iron Chef, but just with villains like Voldemort, Lannister, Tywin Lannister.
Is that why
cooking.
it's hard for us to picture villains eating and caring about food, because it is such a humanizing, like wholesome thing?
Unless they eat like a barbarian, like
unless they're doing some really disgusting that puts us off.
It's so true. It's like in Lord of the Rings Return of the King when they have the
Denethor.
What's his name?
Oh my
Denethor.
God.
Yeah, Denethor eating, and he eats a cherry
That was
tomato, but
disgusting.
does it without putting the whole thing in his mouth. He just bites it in half like an animal.
Yeah,
And,
that's
like, it goes-
horrible. Yeah.
That is one of the best.
Yeah, and it's very like
scenes
bloody
in
and
the-
dribbly.
Oh.
And it's a tomato. It's not even a wow.
And
Yeah.
to bring this back to like a real life example, when Tony Abbott ate that onion, like, isn't that just a great example of just a country reacting to a human eating something they shouldn't, and therefore they're like, he's a monster because he just ate a raw onion like it was an apple. And they're like, clearly you can't trust this man because that's his relationship to food. Oh my God.
Only a psychopath would eat a raw onion.
Yeah.
Like that.
Okay. Okay.
Like
So this is. Go ahead, Matan. Take it away.
what you ate is like the new internet history, isn't it? Like what you eat.
True.
That's like who you are. Sorry, I'm done.
No, that's fair. You are what you eat. Sometimes that's whole raw onions. Okay, so this is a sample of writing where I'm using food a bit of a queer sense. It's like to make something slightly unsettling, where I basically have a vampire talking about what it's like to kill people, and he compares it to eating grapes. And so I use the sensations that we can all relate to around eating grapes, an experience most people have had, to help give sensation to this little bit. All right. So yeah. There once was a man named Phil. He was a lonely man. He didn't get out much, for he had no reason. He didn't know what he wanted in life. Outside of satiating his basic animal needs, he was lost. He had been living this way for quite some time, and for a while he actually believed himself happy. This type of life can allow someone to feign gratification, but slowly, over time, what once gave vigor and satisfaction turns to the life-sapping poison that is routine. One day, Phil awoke and looked around at his perfectly constructed life of monotony. He had no desire to interact with this life, but was panic-stricken at the thought of deviation. He drifted through the day, abiding by the usual carefully measured prescription of stimulation, and found himself at the supermarket. He was in the produce section collecting the standard apples and bananas when suddenly he found himself staring at the grapes, the usual lifeless stare of contemplation that he gave to all things as he debated bringing change into his life. He had never had a grape, and today, being particularly mundane, he craved flavor. He reached out, plucked a single red grape from the vine, and popped it into his mouth. His eyes widened, his mouth filled with a pleasant mixture of sugars and spit. His whole body tingled with life. He had found his calling. Few can say that their calling is so simple, but Phil knew that he had stumbled upon something significant. Grapes became a part of Phil's everyday, and without diminishing return, the grapes brought him happiness. He had energy in the mornings, and he was excited to experience the day. This day would have grapes in it, so this day would be a good day. After a few weeks of daily grape consumption, the same level of bliss was still present. This is his calling, after all. But something began to concern poor Phil. Every time Phil popped one of those plump little blimps of satisfaction into his mouth, he could swear that he heard a small, ever so faint, yet ever so present scream. And I'll end there.
That was beautiful.
Glimpse of satisfaction. I want that on a t-shirt.
I liked that one a lot when I thought of it too.
And was it sugars and sweetness? Or you had a line like that worked really well.
Yeah, filled with a pleasant mixture of sugars and spit.
Sugars and spit, even better. Yeah, no, that was really good. Yeah.
Yes.
Screaming grapes. Still a thing we need. I hope technology takes us there. And I just feel.
Oh God.
I just
You crave a
imagine someone
different
doing
future
it just
from me.
because they can. I imagine if
Yes.
someone makes screaming vegetables like genetically. Never mind. Let's cut this here.
No,
Yeah.
but I loved your layers of metaphor there. That was so you're using tool like the food as a tool and a sensory thing, but then you've also got the context of what the story's about and what it's actually telling us. So
Yeah.
that's working really well.
Yeah, thank you. I like it. So, a context of the story, moment where the whole thing is a letter, and this is a moment where the person writing the letter, in order to explain his motives more clearly in a way a human can understand, is giving a parable so that a lowly human could even understand where he's coming from.
Yeah,
and that's the whole what's going on there.
Beautiful.
And Allie, I think you had a quote.
Yes, I went and grabbed a quote that I thought could summarize everything we've been talking about on this fabulously chaotic but fun podcast today. It comes from Winona LaDuke. Apologies if I've said Winona's name wrong. I believe she has a food blog that I stole this from. Food for us comes from our relatives, whether they have wings or fins or roots. That is how we consider food. Food has culture. It has history. It has a story. It has relationships.
There you go. Food has a story. And we tell those stories. And yeah, I have nothing left to say. Anyway, for all of those that stuck around for the choose, have a good day, and thank you all very much. See you later.
See you next time.
Take care. Bye.
You're listening to Pros and Cons, the Precipice Fiction podcast.